The morning of June 14th dawned with a promise of perfection over Willow Creek, a vibrant and close, knit African-American community nestled on the outskirts of a bustling city. The sun, a warm, golden orb, cast long, inviting shadows across manicured lawns and stately oak trees. It was the day Naomi Dubois, 28, and David, DJ, Johnson, 30, were set to be married at the historic Berean Baptist Church, a cornerstone of Willow Creek for generations. The entire community buzzed with anticipation. Naomi, a beloved kindergarten teacher known for her gentle demeanor and infectious laughter, was marrying DJ, a rising star in the local tech scene, admired for his quiet strength and unwavering dedication. Their romance had blossomed over 2 years, a visible testament to enduring love, and their wedding was touted as the social event of the summer. By the way, before we continue, if stories of true crimes, twisted criminal cases, and the relentless pursuit of justice intrigue you, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button if you want to see more deep dives into the unknown. Subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And please share your thoughts in the comments below. And let us know what country you are watching this from. We would love to tell more crime stories from your area. Now let us get back to the story. Naomi, in her bridal suite at her childhood home, watched her reflection in the full-length mirror. Her gown, an elegant ivory lace creation with a sweeping train, seemed to glow in the soft morning light. Her hair, styled in an intricate updo, framed a face that, even now, carried a faint shadow beneath the surface of excitement. Her mother, Lena, a woman of deep faith and fierce love, fluttered around her. Adjusting the veil, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "My baby girl," Lena murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "You look like an angel. David is so blessed." Naomi offered a strained smile. "I'm lucky too, Mama. DJ is everything." Yet, a tremor of unease, cold and unwelcome, snaked through her. The air in the room, so thick with happiness, felt suffocating. Among the early arrivals at the church was Victor Holloway, 55, Naomi's stepfather of 20 years. A deacon at Berean Baptist, Victor was a respected figure in Willow Creek. Known for his resonant baritone in the choir and his steady presence on community boards. He had stepped into Naomi's life when she was just 8, a comforting, authoritative figure after her biological father's sudden passing. He had raised her, seen her through school, walked her down the aisle at her high school graduation. To all outward appearances, he was a devoted patriarch, a pillar of strength for the Dubois family. But beneath his polished exterior, behind the warm smiles and the respectful nods, lay a darkness that had festered for decades, a secret that had twisted Naomi's life into a silent, internal scream. Since her early teenage years, Naomi had lived with a profound, unspoken shame. Victor, her stepfather, her mother's beloved husband, had been abusing her. It started subtly. Innocent touches that escalated, whispered words of special love, threats veiled in paternal concern that kept her silent. The fear of shattering her mother's happiness, of tearing apart the only stable family she knew, had bound Naomi in a cage of complicity and terror. She built walls around her soul, learning to compartmentalize, to smile brightly for the world while her inner self withered under the weight of Victor's illicit control. DJ had been her escape, her lifeline, his genuine kindness, his unwavering belief in her, offered a glimmer of hope that she could finally break free from the invisible chains that shackled her. The wedding was not just a union, it was her desperate bid for liberation. The community of Willow Creek, bustling with last-minute preparations, was oblivious. Aunt Carol was fussing over the floral arrangements, Pastor Jenkins was reviewing his sermon notes, and children in their Sunday best chased each other through the churchyard. Everyone believed this was a day of unadulterated joy, a celebration of two good souls finding their forever. They saw only the radiant bride, the beaming groom, and the esteemed stepfather. They could not possibly see the raw, festering wound that Naomi carried beneath her silk and lace. The night before the wedding had been a blur of nervous excitement and mounting dread for Naomi. Her bachelorette party, a boisterous affair at a trendy downtown lounge with her closest friends, had been a desperate attempt to drown out the gnawing anxiety. Laughter, music, and sugary cocktails provided a temporary reprieve, a fleeting illusion of carefree happiness. But even as her friends toasted her future, a cold knot twisted in her stomach. She knew she had to confront Victor, just one last time, to set boundaries, to make it clear that after tomorrow, she would be truly free. It was a naive, desperate hope. She slipped away from her friends early, feigning fatigue. The pre-wedding jitters were a convenient excuse. When she arrived back at her childhood home, the house was quiet, save for the soft glow of a lamp in the living room. Victor was there, nursing a glass of bourbon, ostensibly checking on last-minute details. Her mother Lena had retired early, exhausted from weeks of planning. The air was thick with unspoken tension, a familiar dance of power and fear. Naomi. Victor's voice was smooth, deceptively gentle, as he rose to greet her. He moved closer, his gaze predatory, possessive. Couldn't sleep, princess. Just thinking about tomorrow. My little girl. All grown up. He reached out, his hand brushing her cheek, a touch that sent shivers of revulsion down her spine. You know, no matter what, you'll always be my special girl, won't you? My first love. Naomi recoiled subtly, her voice trembling despite her efforts to steady it. Victor, please, don't. Tomorrow is about David. It's a new beginning. Everything changes now. She tried to assert a boundary, a fragile declaration of independence. Victor chuckled, a low, unnerving sound. Changes. My dear, some things never change. You belong to me, in ways he could never understand. I taught you about love, about devotion. He's just a boy playing dress up. His words were laced with a venomous possessiveness, a chilling reminder of his long-standing psychological hold. The conversation escalated, quickly spiraling into a heated, whispered argument. Naomi pleaded, begged him to let her go, to allow her this one chance at happiness. Victor, however, saw her desperation as an invitation, a final opportunity to assert his control. He played on her deepest fears, the fear of exposure, of her mother's heartbreak, of David's rejection. He whispered about past intimacies, about secrets that could shatter her perfect day, about the unbreakable bond they shared. He reminded her of the photos, carefully hidden, he had taken over the years, subtle threats that promised ruin. Broken, exhausted, and feeling utterly trapped, Naomi succumbed. It was not a consensual act of love, but a terrifying reassertion of power, a final, horrifying act of submission born from a lifetime of terror and manipulation. He wanted to mark her, to remind her of his ownership before she dared to step into a new life. As the night bled into the early hours of her wedding day, Naomi lay awake, tears silently soaking her pillow, the weight of her secret pressing down on her like a tombstone. She felt defiled, utterly despairing, but she clung to one last desperate hope, that this was the absolute, final time. That tomorrow, she would truly be free. She had to believe that. Before Victor left her room, a cruel, parting gesture, he said, "Just a little reminder of where your true loyalty lies, my sweet. Don't forget. And don't ever think you can truly escape." He pressed something into her hand, a small, elegant cufflink, silver and engraved with the initials, VH, a keepsake, he murmured, a perverse smile playing on his lips. "From our last night together, my love. Just in case you forget." He walked out, leaving her trembling, clutching the cold metal, a macabre trophy of her enduring torment. She wanted to throw it away, to burn it, but fear held her paralyzed. She slipped it into the small, hidden pocket of her bridal robe, a dark secret against her skin. The morning arrived, a cruel mockery of her inner turmoil. The church filled with family and friends, their faces beaming with anticipation. David, standing at the altar, looked handsome and earnest, his eyes shining with pure love as he watched the sanctuary doors. Naomi, her face carefully composed, walked down the aisle on Victor's arm, her white gown a stark contrast to the blackness in her heart. She focused on David, on his outstretched hand, a beacon of hope in her personal darkness. Every step was an act of defiance, a silent prayer for deliverance. The ceremony proceeded beautifully, filled with hymns and heartfelt blessings from Pastor Jenkins. Then came the vows, the moment when two souls publicly bound themselves together. David, his voice clear and resonant, began his vows, heartfelt words about eternal commitment and unwavering love. "Naomi, my love," he began, his gaze tender. "From the moment I saw you, I knew my life would never be the same. You are my sunshine, my strength, my everything. I promise to cherish you, to honor you, to stand by you through all of life's seasons, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do us part." A wave of emotion swept through the congregation, many dabbing at their eyes. It was then, as David finished his profound declaration, that the world imploded. As Naomi reached for her bouquet, a small, glinting object slipped from the hidden pocket of her bridal robe, falling silently onto the plush red carpet of the altar. It was the silver cufflink, engraved with the initials VH. It landed near David's foot, catching the sunlight, a small, innocent glint of metal that harbored a monstrous secret. David, about to begin his own vows, instinctively glanced down. His eyes landed on the cufflink, his brow furrowed in confusion. He bent down, picking it up. He recognized it instantly. It was the cufflink Victor Holloway, Naomi's stepfather, often wore with his formal suits, a distinctive piece he had complimented once. David's confusion turned to a slight frown. Why was this here? At that precise moment, a low, guttural murmur rippled through the front row. Aunt Carol, perched on the edge of her seat, clutching a tissue, had leaned over to Lena, Naomi's mother, to whisper something. Lena, still teary-eyed, pulled her ear closer. "Lena," Aunt Carol hissed, her voice barely audible, but carrying an unmistakable undertone of malicious gossip. "Did you see Victor last night? He was in Naomi's room. Looked like he spent the night there. Shameful." Aunt Carol, known for her sharp tongue and even sharper eyes, had seen Victor exiting Naomi's room in the pre-dawn hours, long after Lena had gone to bed. She had initially dismissed it as a fatherly check-in, but the sudden appearance of the cufflink, combined with the general atmosphere, sparked a darker interpretation. Lena's eyes snapped open, a horrified gasp escaping her lips. "What are you saying, Carol?" Her eyes darted from the cufflink in David's hand to Victor, who stood stoically nearby, then to Naomi's pale, trembling face. A sickening realization dawned on her. David, still holding the cufflink, heard Aunt Carol's hissed whisper. His head shot up. His eyes, once full of tender love for Naomi, narrowed, locking onto the silver object in his palm. The VH engraving seemed to burn into his skin. His gaze then swept from the cufflink to Naomi's terrified eyes, then to Victor, who stood impassively, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. In that single, excruciating second, the pieces slammed together in David's mind. The late return home last night Naomi had explained away as prolonged, nervous jitters. The faint, almost imperceptible scent of Victor's cologne he thought he'd noticed on her bridal robe earlier that morning. The the secret glances he dismissed as fatherly affection. It all clicked. The cufflink, the whispered accusation, the truth, ugly and raw, exploded within him. Naomi, seeing the dawning horror in David's eyes, seeing him grasp the cufflink, knew her world had ended. Her breath hitched. As this true, Naomi, David's voice was no longer tender, but a low, guttural growl, barely recognizable, laced with a terrifying blend of disbelief and unbridled fury. He held up the cufflink, its silver gleaming accusingly. Did you sleep with him last night?" His eyes, usually so warm and kind, were now cold, filled with a terrifying, murderous rage. Naomi, paralyzed by terror, could only manage a choked whisper, a single, agonizing nod. The truth, finally, out in the open. David's face contorted, a mask of pure, unadulterated pain and betrayal. The dream shattered, the promises hollowed, the future incinerated. You defiled our love," he snarled, his voice rising, echoing through the stunned silence of the church. "You defiled me." On our wedding day, his hands, which moments before had reached out to take hers in eternal promise, now shot forward, gripping her throat with terrifying force. A collective gasp ripped through the church. Lena screamed, a sound of pure agony. Pastor Jenkins recoiled in horror. Guests scrambled, chairs clattered, but the scene unfolding before them was too sudden, too horrifying, too impossible to comprehend. David's grip tightened, his knuckles white, his eyes bulging with a murderous intensity that consumed him entirely. Naomi's eyes widened, her hands scrabbling weakly at his, her face turning a ghastly shade of blue. Her last breath was a desperate, silent plea for the freedom she had so desperately sought. In mere seconds, amidst the lilies and the wedding finery, Naomi Dubois, the radiant bride, choked on her own shattered dreams, falling lifelessly to the plush red carpet. Dead on the spot. Chaos erupted within the hallowed walls of Berean Baptist Church. A cacophony of screams, shouts, and frantic movements replaced the solemn hymns. Ushers, stunned by the sudden, brutal violence, fumbled for their phones. Lena, Naomi's mother, collapsed to her knees beside her daughter's lifeless body. Her cries a raw, guttural sound of pure, maternal anguish. Victor Holloway stood rigidly in the front pew, his face a mask of shock, yet his eyes held a strange, almost imperceptible flicker of something else. Satisfaction, perhaps, quickly masked by feigned horror. David, DJ, Johnson stood frozen over Naomi's crumpled form, his hands still clenched, his chest heaving, his eyes wide and vacant, as if he had just woken from a terrible nightmare, only to find it terrifyingly real. He barely registered the frantic shouts, the horrified faces, the absolute destruction he had wrought. He was quickly tackled by a few of the male guests, including two off-duty police officers attending the wedding, who wrestled him to the ground, securing him with improvised restraints until uniformed units arrived. The call came into dispatch at 11:32 a.m. Possible homicide. Berean Baptist Church, bride deceased, suspect detained. Detective Imani Harper, a sharp, methodical investigator with a reputation for unwavering focus, was on duty. Her partner, Detective Reynolds, a more outwardly cynical but equally effective officer, was already in the car when the call came through. "Wedding gone wrong, huh?" Reynolds muttered, shaking his head. Never a dull moment in this city. Harper remained silent, her mind already racing through potential scenarios, the grim details of a domestic tragedy. When they arrived, the scene was a grotesque tableau of shattered dreams. Police cars, sirens now muted, lined the street. Crime scene tape, stark yellow against the vibrant green of the church lawn, crisscrossed the entrance. Inside, paramedics were officially pronouncing Naomi Dubois deceased, covering her body with a white sheet, a stark contrast to her wedding gown. The lilies on the altar seemed to wilt in the oppressive atmosphere. Detective Harper took in the scene with a practiced, detached gaze. The scattered petals, the overturned chairs, the weeping congregation huddled together like a flock of traumatized birds. DJ Johnson was handcuffed. Seated on a pew, staring blankly ahead, his wedding suit rumpled, his face smeared with sweat and what looked like a tear track. His eyes, when they occasionally flickered, held a deep, unreadable despair. What happened here? Harper asked the uniformed officer who greeted them, her voice calm and authoritative amidst the lingering chaos. The officer briefed her quickly. Bride choked to death by the groom, detective. Mid-vows. Apparently, he found out she slept with someone else the night before. Witnesses confirm. Harper's gaze swept to Victor Holloway, who was now being comforted by Naomi Dubois, his arm around her shaking shoulders. He seemed profoundly distraught. Yet Harper noticed the way his gaze kept flicking towards DJ, a subtle intensity that seemed out of place for a man grieving such a public tragedy. And then she saw it, resting on the altar, clearly marked for evidence, the silver cufflink, still glinting accusingly. Initial statements from the terrified wedding guests painted a consistent picture. DJ Johnson, consumed by a jealous rage, had murdered his bride at the altar. They spoke of the whispered conversation, the dropped cufflink, DJ's sudden, violent outburst. The motive seemed clear, brutal, and horrifyingly simple. But Harper, with her years of experience, knew that simple motives rarely told the whole story, especially when family secrets were involved. This public, violent act felt too sudden, too cataclysmic to be just about infidelity. There was a deeper current here, something more sinister simmering beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect day. Detective Harper and Reynolds began their methodical investigation, sifting through the layers of shock and grief that enveloped Willow Creek. DJ Johnson, in custody, was largely unresponsive, locked in a catatonic state of despair. His lawyer quickly advised him to remain silent, and his statements were initially fragmented, rambling about betrayal and a monstrous lie. He broke. His mother, a distraught, pious woman, told Detective Reynolds through sobs, "My son, he's never been a violent man. Something terrible must have pushed him over the edge." Harper focused on the catalyst, the cufflink, and the whispered gossip. She interviewed Aunt Carol, a woman who, despite her initial reluctance to speak ill of the deceased, could not resist the allure of being at the center of a scandal. "I saw Victor, Naomi's stepfather, coming out of her room early this morning," Aunt Carol recounted, her voice hushed but eager. "Long after Lena was asleep. And then that cufflink, it just dropped right there at the altar. It was his, always wore it." She recounted the whispered conversation she had with Lena, confirming DJ had overheard it. Harper then interviewed Victor Holloway. He presented himself as a devastated patriarch, struggling with the dual tragedies of his stepdaughter's death and his son-in-law's monstrous act. He spoke eloquently of Naomi's sweetness, her kindness, and his enduring love for her. But Harper noticed the subtle tells. The slight tremor in his hands, not of grief, but of barely suppressed excitement, and the way his eyes, when he thought no one was looking, lingered on the details of the tragedy, almost savoring the pain. "The cufflink, Mr. Holloway?" Harper asked, holding up the evidence in a clear plastic bag. "Is this yours?" Victor feigned surprise. "Why, yes, detective. It looks like one of mine. A gift from Lena many years ago." "How on earth did it get to the altar?" His voice was calm, controlled, too controlled. "That's what we're trying to determine," Harper stated, her gaze unwavering. "And what were you doing in Naomi's room the night before the wedding, Mr. Holloway?" "Aunt Carol saw you leaving early this morning." Victor's composure faltered for a fraction of a second, but he quickly recovered. "Just a fatherly check-in, detective." Naomi was very nervous. I was just making sure she was all right, saying a final prayer for her before her big day. The lie was delivered smoothly, almost convincingly, but Harper knew better. The pieces were starting to fit, forming a far more sinister picture than mere infidelity. She ordered a search warrant for Victor Holloway's home and electronic devices. What they found there unveiled the true, horrifying plot twist. Hidden in a locked drawer in Victor's study, concealed beneath stacks of church bulletins and financial ledgers, was a discreet hard drive. On it, they discovered a cache of photographs and videos, images of Naomi, from her early teens well into adulthood, captured in compromising, intimate situations. The dates spanned years, a horrifying timeline of sustained, coercive sexual abuse. The sheer volume and nature of the files confirmed a long-standing, systematic pattern of sexual exploitation. Naomi had not merely slept with her stepfather the night before the wedding. She had been a victim of his abuse for years. Trapped by his power and her own desperate fear of exposing him and shattering her family. The act on the night before the wedding was not a choice, but a final, brutal reassertion of his control, a defilement designed to ruin her attempt at escape. But the most damning discovery was a series of text messages recovered from Victor's phone, sent to a burner phone number belonging to Naomi. These messages, sent just minutes before the wedding ceremony began, were chillingly manipulative. One ready, "Don't forget our bond, my sweet. It's deeper than any vows. Your secret is safe with me, unless you forget your true master." Another, sent barely 5 minutes before Naomi walked down the aisle, stated, "Just left a little reminder for you, darling, at the altar, so you never truly forget who you belong to." It became agonizingly clear. The cufflink wasn't accidentally dropped. Victor had deliberately placed it there, knowing DJ would see it, knowing Aunt Carol would whisper, knowing the combination would ignite David's rage. He hadn't just defiled Naomi, he had meticulously orchestrated her destruction. Driven by a twisted, possessive fury that she dared to seek happiness and freedom with another man. He wanted to ruin her, to claim her, even in death, preventing her from ever truly escaping his clutches. He had set a trap, a meticulously planned act of psychological terrorism, knowing it would culminate in violence. The fatherly check-in was a lie. He had entered her room, not to wish her well, but to plant the cufflink, ensuring her humiliation and inevitable demise. This wasn't a crime of passion alone. It was a calculated act of ultimate control, a perverse climax to years of abuse, turning a day of joy into a scene of unimaginable horror. DJ was a pawn, an unwitting instrument of Victor's vindictive, psychopathic design. The revelation of Victor Holloway's long, standing abuse and his diabolical orchestration of Naomi's murder sent shockwaves through Willow Creek. The community, already reeling from the public murder, now grappled with the shattering truth about one of its most respected figures. The picture of the devoted deacon and stepfather dissolved into that of a monster. Naomi Dubois, Naomi's mother, was utterly devastated. Her grief compounded by the horrifying realization that her husband had been abusing her daughter for years, all under her own roof. The pain of her daughter's death was now intertwined with the agony of her own profound betrayal and complicity, however unwitting. DJ Johnson's defense team immediately seized on this new evidence. They argued for justifiable homicide under extreme emotional distress. Triggered by Victor's malicious manipulation and the revelation of horrific abuse, they painted DJ as a victim himself, driven to an uncontrollable rage by a deliberate act of psychological torture. The trial became a media spectacle, drawing national attention. As the layers of the complex tragedy were peeled back for public consumption. In a dramatic courtroom scene, Victor Holloway, confronted with the overwhelming evidence from his hard drive and phone, finally broke down, not in remorse, but in a chilling torrent of self-pity and perverse justification. He confessed to the years of abuse, claiming Naomi was that she had tempted him, and that David was stealing her away. His chilling calm gave way to a twisted narrative of ownership and entitlement, exposing the narcissistic core of his personality. He denied directly intending for DJ to kill Naomi, but admitted to planting the cufflink as a warning, a final message, to assert his dominance. His intention, he claimed, was merely to expose Naomi and shame her, to ruin her happiness, not to cause her death. But the prosecution successfully argued that his actions were a direct, foreseeable cause of the violent outcome. The justice system, however, had to navigate the complexities of this unprecedented case. DJ Johnson was ultimately convicted of a lesser charge, likely manslaughter, given the profound mitigating circumstances of Victor's manipulation and the extreme emotional distress he experienced. The sentence acknowledged the severity of his actions, but also the extraordinary provocation. He would serve a significant prison term, his life forever changed by a moment of unimaginable rage and the crushing weight of betrayal. Victor Holloway faced a litany of charges, including sexual assault, aggravated abuse, and a primary charge of conspiracy to commit murder, based on the deliberate orchestration of the scenario that led to Naomi's death. The evidence against him was overwhelming, painting him as a calculating, sadistic individual. He was convicted on all counts and sentenced to multiple life terms, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his days behind bars, stripped of his deceptive facade and the power he so cravenly wielded. The church, a place of solace and community, struggled to heal from the trauma. Pastor Jenkins led numerous counseling sessions, trying to mend the broken spirit of his congregation. The community of Willow Creek was forever scarred, its trust in familiar faces irrevocably shaken. Naomi Dubois, the vibrant teacher, became a tragic symbol, her death a stark reminder of the hidden monsters that can lurk in plain sight, even within the most respected institutions. Her story became a rallying cry for victims of silent abuse, a testament to the devastating consequences of secrets kept in power unchecked. This profoundly disturbing story, woven from deceit, manipulation, and ultimately unimaginable violence, offers several critical lessons that extend beyond the confines of Willow Creek and the tragic lives of its inhabitants. Firstly, appearances can be devastatingly deceptive. The individual society elevates, the respected community leader, the devout churchgoer, the seemingly devoted family man, can often be the most adept at concealing monstrous darkness. This case highlights the crucial need to look beyond outward impressions and to cultivate a healthy skepticism when something feels subtly amiss. Abuse often thrives in silence and behind masks of respectability. Trust your instincts, especially when they tell you something is wrong, even if you cannot immediately articulate why. Secondly, the insidious nature of psychological and sexual abuse, particularly within family structures, cannot be overstated. Naomi's prolonged suffering at Victor's hands demonstrates how coercive control and threats can trap a victim, forcing them into silent complicity out of fear of shattering a perceived family harmony. Abuse is not always physical. Emotional manipulation, gaslighting, and the exploitation of trust are equally, if not more, damaging. If you are experiencing any form of abuse, or if you suspect someone you know is a victim, remember that your safety and well-being are paramount. Seek help immediately. There are resources available to provide support, protection, and a pathway to freedom. Thirdly, secrets, particularly those involving profound trauma and abuse, are corrosive. They do not protect, they destroy from within. isolating victims and creating environments ripe for further exploitation. The weight of Naomi's secret, the shame and fear that prevented her from speaking out, ultimately led to her tragic demise. This underscores the critical importance of fostering open, supportive environments where individuals feel safe to disclose abuse without fear of judgment or retaliation. For those who are struggling with a secret, understand that silence serves only the abuser. Breaking the silence is the first, brave step towards healing and justice. Finally, unaddressed trauma and unchecked rage can have catastrophic consequences. David's explosion of violence, while provoked by an unthinkable betrayal and Victor's malicious manipulation, resulted in the ultimate act of destruction. This highlights the importance of emotional regulation, seeking healthy outlets for anger and pain, and understanding the profound impact of trauma on human behavior. While his actions were the direct cause of Naomi's death, the intricate web of abuse and manipulation that led to that moment demonstrates the complex interplay of factors that can culminate in tragedy. Thank you for joining us on this difficult journey through the shadows of betrayal and the heartbreaking complexities of human cruelty. If this story resonated with you, if it sparked important questions about abuse, secrets, or the justice system, please share your reflections by leaving a thoughtful comment below. Your engagement helps us continue to share these critical narratives and foster crucial conversations that can prevent future tragedies. If you found this deep dive into true crime compelling and wish to support our work in shedding light on these often hidden corners of society, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to our channel for more stories that explore the darker side of human nature, always aiming to shed light where it is most desperately needed. Until next time, stay safe, be vigilant, and never underestimate the power of hidden truths.